Meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. The first order of business are the minutes of September 16th, 2015. Is there a motion to approve? Motion been made to approve. Is there a second? Any discussion, corrections, or additions to these minutes? If being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. Motion approved to approve the minutes. Thank you. We have one regular item on our agenda today, and it's a rezone. It's to consider a rezone petition from ag to planned unit development. The site is generally located in the northwest quarter of section 27, township 139 north, range 96 west. The site is approximately 83.7 acres, give or take 3 acres. And at this time, we'd have the party presenting. Please feel free to come forward and present.
Good morning, my name is Steve Ruda. This is for the Stark County Fairgrounds. I'm going to do Stark County Park Board. Most of the year. And
Oh, here.
thank you. We're now to the point where we want to rezone the property from ag to planned unit development. Worked with staff, had several meetings with them, and we decided this was the right way to go. And staff has come up with a set of about 20 conditions, and they all look good to us. And most of them will require us to update the PUD document, finalize some exhibits, and it's been a pretty easy process. Been good work with Walter and Mark. And I'll just answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions at this time? Any comments?
One question that's come up is the projected timeline of phase 2, phase 3.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any discussion on that or not?
The Stark County Fair Association is really focused on phase 1 because of funding. Right now, I don't think they really have a plan to go beyond that. I mean, they want to. There's a desire to go beyond that. I just think that they're focused solely on phase 1 and getting their rodeo arena and rodeo facilities up and running. I just noticed in yesterday's paper, I think it was, that there's been a decision finally now to proceed with a presidential library on what's now the rodeo grounds at DSU. So they're hot to get out of there to make room for the next use at their current location. So I think they're really not focused beyond the fairgrounds right now. There are, of course, you've seen, there have been conceptual plans, ideas generated over the last year and a half, something like that. But I don't think they're heading there anytime soon. I don't know.
Steve, you're exactly right. Walter, they're not, at the present time, they're dealing with X amount of dollars, and that's what they're working with. So they're looking at the rodeo arena, and that's really it at this point in time. I don't know if, that's something I wanted to ask you, Steve. The entrance on in, will that be paved all the way in?
From the highway
Parking
in.
spots. From the highway all the way in, it will be
Yes.
paved.
Yes.
Okay.
And about 200 spots
Yeah.
out in front of to the west of the arena.
Right.
I don't really have questions. It's good to see this happening. Some of us have been watching it for, what, 20 years
Yeah.
or something? The only comment is stormwater, probably be a little bit more significant issue, I suppose, on this site with the stock and whatnot. I don't know what your plans are, but just to work closely with engineering on that part of it.
We will. We anticipate putting in doing a site plan application sometime in December, hopefully around the 1st of December, and we'll have to meet the, excuse me, all the Dickinson stormwater regulations and all that.
Steve, on the parking on the Phase 1, you've listed that you're going to have so many paved spots, so many grass spots, and another gravel. What, have you defined what a grass parking space is? Is that defined anywhere that you know of?
No, I don't know of any definition of it, but one would have to plan for, you know, so many 10 by 20 spots. Gets, you know, those fairgrounds sometimes gets to be a free-for-all, but as long as you provide adequate space, that's what we're thinking right now. I mean, we're open to suggestions you might have, though, too.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
And site grading is actually underway. We've, because of the tight time frame that the Fair Association has put on us, they want to do Rough Rider Days here next year. You probably have all heard, I don't know, but there's a pad is being graded right now, as shown on Exhibit E in the PUD documents there. It's almost done. They just need to install some culverts and replace the topsoil and reseed it this fall, so hopefully it'll be, you know, vegetated pretty quickly in the spring and minimize dust issues.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make a comment on this rezone. Please feel free to come forward, say your name and address, and I'd like to hear your comment.
Good morning. My name is April Kitson, and we are located at 4042 Highway 22, so basically the first left after 40th Street. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today regarding this hearing. My husband Denver and I are directly south of the proposed project. On Exhibit C that was submitted to you, we are the residential land that is adjacent to this acreage. As of right now, I'd like to address some of our concerns and questions in regards to the rezoning petition. And I'll just kind of list them, and then if you need to interrupt, feel free, please. How will this planned unit development affect the value of our property? Number 2 is we're concerned with the possible increase in traffic. Number 3 is the noise in relation to the events that may take place, such as the carnival, motocross races, demolition derbies, and tractor pulls. Currently, there is dirt work being done on the site, and it's fairly loud. Number 4, our privacy and the safety of our children, with the possibility of a large amount of people having access to our property, which may be the case if some of those events do take place. Number 5, we have just some concerns about the current proposal for drainage and how it may affect our property. Number 6, what type of landscape buffers are mandatory to protect our safety and privacy? Number 7, to be clear, what are the available options in a planned unit development? I know that I've mentioned some of them, such as the carnival and the tractor pulls. I visited with Arnie about a few of the things that they're considering, but if there are any that were not listed, I'm curious as to what those may be. Number 8 is how far from our shared property line will the building be taking place? And in the motion for approval that has been presented to you, it states that it is in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare. And in relation to the current concerns that I mentioned, I'm wondering if there's maybe some more information that can be provided before approval. And in conclusion, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to share our concerns and ask that you consider them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Being you have, if you don't mind, being you have many concerns, we can't
Sure.
give you fully concrete answers right now, but I think being this is the only item on the agenda, we're going to give you the little privilege here of probably having some of your concerns addressed,
Okay.
because I do think they're valid concerns, and we'll see if we can, someone has some answers here for you for some of them, and that looking forward that someone will get you answers that are acceptable. The one concern that, and I'm going to address right away, and then I'm going to let the other commissioners, if they have something to say about the other one, is the drainage. And Mr. Jackson already had mentioned that in this proposal. And we do have some ongoing issues with drainage already in city-owned territory. And I think it is the utmost that our engineers see to it that the drainage issue is done properly, and that they reach out for someone who has expertise in that area to ensure that the property owners adjacent to this property does not be adversely affected by drainage. That, I think, is an issue that must be dealt with ahead of time, not after the fact. That concern, I believe, you should not let go by the wayside, because after the fact, fixing drainage problems is costly, effective. The cost of it is extremely high. Effective repairs are not necessarily so, but to ensure that it doesn't happen, I think is extremely important. That concern, I think, is very valid. And I had one question for you: is how long have events been taking place at this facility, or activities at this facility that you know of so far?
None. No, don't. Yeah, I was just bringing up what the proposed ones were.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to address any of the concerns?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we shouldn't get Mrs. Kitson a copy of the...
Is
Get that?
Is it with the 20?
Yeah.
Yes, I do have that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I do have that, and I did read through that. Some of it, I don't mean to sound unintelligent, but some of it is written in somewhat legal terminology, and so, for example, I think I mentioned like the screening or what type of buffers would be. I think I said mandatory in respect so that we don't have people crossing over into our property. And I saw a little bit of, there was on one of the drawings, there was some landscape buffers. There was like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 dots there. So I wasn't actually sure what that would consist of. And so that's why.
I think Mr. Hadley could probably address that issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we can, I think the course of action on this, as far as answering all the questions, would be to allow the applicant to come up and address, because I think a number of those items have been addressed in the conditions of approval. The site plan has been altered from that initial one, and maybe just a little better plain explanation on how the screening would work. I am not clear. I have one question for you. Are you thinking that landscape buffer is sufficient, or are you thinking that you need more of a separation, fence, what have you?
Sure. We do have on part of our property several tall trees, but there is a large open space that actually is adjacent to the land, and there's no trees that are planted there, and so it's just completely open. And that would probably be my biggest concern. I did talk to Arnie, and he said that they're considering putting up a fence, but sometimes considering and then it actually happening can be different. And so, that's why I said, is there anything that the city in those list of 20 conditions, and I know all of this is not happening at once, but sometimes if you don't say something prior, then it doesn't get addressed, and it's too far down the road to express your concerns later.
Thank you, and the way the condition is written for that is that they would have to provide that information to me.
Okay.
I would review it and approve it based on the direction of this board.
Okay.
I think your concerns are valid because you may not live there forever, and we know Arnie's not going to be around forever. So take out those two factors and what can actually be done with the property or your property could be totally different things. So the use of the property and adjacent properties, that's what we're really here to address. And your concerns have brought that up. They highlight that. That may not be you and it may not be the current members of the directors of the facility may have different ideas. So it's good that you have these concerns ahead of time and that to ensure that the local government is walking over you and that your concerns are met. Because this facility and the surrounding neighbors, all of that may change in the future, and we're here to see that it's done right from the beginning.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to make comment on this rezone petition? If not, before we close public hearing, I'm going to ask Mr. Hadley for his recommendation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as part of that, I would maybe like to ask the applicant to clarify a few of the conditions and concerns that the President brought up, and then also I'll address what he hasn't addressed, and then make a recommendation if that's all right.
That is fine. That's great. Mr. Rood?
Hopefully. Steve Rood, AE2S, on behalf of the applicant. I can't address property value. Unfortunately, I'm not an appraiser, but so I have no idea how this facility would affect neighboring property values. Traffic. The Fair Association has directed us to plan for a maximum event of about 3,500. That's once a year, I think, at the Derby, Demolition Derby. I think that's the maximum crowd they draw, 3,500. For planning purposes, we estimate, based on city code, about one parking space per 4 attendees. So that's about 900 total parking stalls. So you could figure that's, 900 vehicles entering and exiting the site once a year, perhaps, for a day. 2,500 at a rodeo, I think, is another number they gave us once or twice a year. But average events tend to be in the 200 to 400 people range, which is 50 to 100 vehicles at a time. DOT has not requested a traffic study. They've said for phase 1 we don't need a traffic study to look at impacts on Highway 22. And city staff has not requested one because this is an on-site thing. Because DOT doesn't really want it, wouldn't really serve a purpose, I think, on site. That's my understanding. Noise, yes, some of these potential, let me address potential uses first. City code outlines potential uses in, for 2 different, I think we're looking at public assembly, and I didn't bring, there's 2 potential uses that we've discussed and agreed to here, public assembly and one other public use under, and so any use perhaps under those, any specific event or activity that's allowable under those allowed uses in zoning could occur there. And I imagine some could be noisy, rodeos, demolition derbies. I doubt this is going to be at least in phase 1, a full-time noisy event. I don't know how else to address the noise issue, though. The building, the pad that's being constructed and it's planned, I'll address landscaping and distance from property lines. The pad that's being constructed right now is 400 feet from the Kitson's property line. We're leaving that first 400 feet natural, undisturbed, plus adding a tree row around the south edge of the pad. Hopefully that's, I don't know, we can decide if we need more. But that's the general concept here. We're 400 feet from the property line and adding a landscape buffer.
Could I interrupt you?
Yes.
Ms. Kitson talked about an open space along the property line where there are no trees. Do you know how long that is?
No, I don't.
Yeah. You know, that might be something we could think about, is doing some planting along that open space,
Sure.
depending on what the distance is.
Mr. Chairman, let me butt in a little bit there. On that plan itself, and I think, Steve, if you want to mention that, we visited and I'd marked up one that kind of gave an idea of what I was looking at, and it showed significant landscaping along that entire side, wrapping around the parking area. I think it would resolve a lot of the issues that we're talking about, and whether it's an open area or not, they actually would be doing some landscaping along their entire improvement area. And then second question quickly I have is the distance from the parking to the property line. Do you know that?
It'll be over 400 feet.
The parking is too?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, the idea is, the concept we've been working with anyways is a screening situation, you know, a full up, plant enough spruce trees or something to visually screen the whole facility from the south. That's been the intent all along. And that's drainage. The concept that we're working with is to use the natural swale to this northeast of the facility and build up some, I don't remember if they're detention is what they say, detention ponds in that area to pick up to deal with on-site stormwater. We are not disturbing any drainage area between the facility and Mrs. Kitson's property. Therefore, natural drainage will continue as it is. Her drainage engineer is extremely conservative, sometimes annoyingly so, but in the end he ends up giving a good product. He's very sensitive to off-site impacts, and so as we go into detailed design here, we intend to deal with things properly. I'll just summarize it that way, because if I say any more, I'll get into engineering stuff that I don't understand. But we're very conservative on this. We will not allow off-site impacts. It's not even allowed by city code. Therefore, we have to, do what's right. And again, Mrs. Kitson's property is not even, or the drainage that's just north of her property is not even going to be touched. So, natural drainage patterns should remain. And let's see what else. I think that covers. I think that covers what Mrs. Kitson's concerns are.
Mr. Root,
Yes, sir.
in the ordinances, when you talk about events, the city has in the ordinance and the county ordinances, they have timelines on when events can occur and have to end, right?
As far as,
So if you have an event scheduled that must end by midnight or 1 o'clock or whatever, it can't go on all night. Have tractor pulls at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I hope not. I don't know of any rules on those matters.
I don't live very far from the new stadium over on DSU and the rodeo grounds. And I hear those events, if I'm sitting out at night and the lights are on in the stadium, and I hear the rodeo announcers, and I hear the people that are doing the demolition derby. But so far, none of those events have gone on very late at night. They occur and then they're over with. And the traffic there probably is approximately about what's going to be starting out with phase one anyway at this facility, because they draw a fairly good amount of people to those rodeos and to the demolition derby and the other events they have at the stadium. So the traffic's probably going to be, have you done any comparison studies on what you think the traffic in phase one is going to be compared to other events that are happening now right here in this area?
We've not done any formal traffic studies. We've been operating under the understanding that the current facility is going to simply replace the proposed facility will replace the current facility and its uses. It's just a one-for-one replacement, so that whatever is currently acceptable as far as traffic is just going to, that amount is just going to move somewhere else, out of town, actually. That's where we are with it.
Mr. Chairman, Steve, do you know how many events are held over the course of a year? Any idea? I have no idea.
I really don't know. We've asked the question, and it's been fairly a vague response. Maximum, again, the maximum proposed is 3,500 for the demo derby.
How many events over the course of a year? How many days are they going to be operating that facility? That's what I'm wondering.
We've wondered the same thing.
Okay.
Is there intent for college rodeo to be out there at times?
I don't know if DSU has any interest out there or not.
Yeah.
At one time they did, but I'm not even certain of that.
But we'd certainly be wrong to suggest that, I mean, on the nights of the demolition derby, there's going to be noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Like I say, there's noise in
Tractor
my house
pull.
on the demolition derby. But
I hear it live at 5, and I live on Palm Beach Road. I hear that thing down there at night.
And
so.
when you live in the city, those are mild annoyances, and you realize that's part of living here.
Yep.
And that probably a great amount of people benefit from those events or participate in them. And it's like sometimes you don't even hear the train whistle anymore. You kind of just, it's there. And along with Mr. Alston's question, beside the number of events, will it be holding events all year round? Will there be winter events out there? Are there going to be snowmobiling events? Or I mean, what?
I've heard no discussion of those, of winter type events. Really, the focus has been on rodeo and Rough Rider days. That has been the sole focus of the Fair Association right now. It's replacing the events that have occurred at the DSU location. To which, when I drive by there, I see rodeos, small rodeos, and roping events and things like that. That has been the sole focus of this operation. It's not been to expand it, in phase one at least, into truck pulls and motocross events and things like that. There's been no discussion of that whatsoever. There's been a real frantic rush to get out of the DSU location, really.
The major concern, Mr. Chairman, what I would have is the area that's being opened up and how they plan on taking care of the weeds that may grow next year. Who's going to take care of it? I know the Fair Association, but Walter, maybe that's something we need to make darn certain of, because I know we've had problems with some of these developments that are out there at the present time that people have walked away from, more or less, trying to get them to cut these weeds down.
And we may as well recognize, the city has gotten pretty aggressive this year with the weed thing, but we're in the ETZ now.
Right.
And so that's, we're going to have to work with
So
the
I'm going to
county.
consider it your responsibility.
I know you will.
There-
But we're going to have to work that out.
Yeah.
to-
We
Mr.
do.
Elkin, is there an ordinance in the county about weeds?
Well, there is,
Usually
but,
it's a federal one, isn't it, that says if you you've got Russian thistle, you've got this kind, you have to do it, or they'll come and spray it for you and charge you?
Well, no.
There isn't here?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we've had that discussion with the Department of Ag, and, you know, we have our list of noxious weeds, and we also have a weed control officer in the county, but there's nothing that states that we can even get on that property to, on private property, to spray their property.
Well, maybe there should be.
That would have to come up in the next legislative session.
I mean, I think it's valid,
It's-
because
Yes, it is.
I have some property in a place that is the law. They can come onto your private property.
Yes,
And
I
they
do
can
too.
spray the noxious weeds, and you'll get charged.
Yep, I have likewise owned property in that situation.
Yep. So, I mean, we need something to ensure Mr. Elkins' concern.
Mr. Chairman,
Have-
just to verify, if you look at condition number 17, if there does become a weed problem, we would be able to put the applicant on notice.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we've done that too, Walter, but by that time, they've blown into the neighbor's fence row or into their tree belt. You know, it just becomes a question of enforcement. And who's going to enforce? Will April or Denver have to call up you or somebody in the city, and somebody has to run out there? Now it's a question of trying to run down who's responsible for
Well, I
this.
think
Well, and if
my
I may,
comment to that would be, I think if we take it seriously enough, if there actually is a major weed problem there, we're putting the applicant on notice right now, that if that does happen, this board can make a recommendation to the city commission to revoke this conditional planning of the
Mhm.
development. So I mean, yes, that would not be a fun process, but that is a hammer, the ultimate hammer you have is the ultimate approval to utilize that site.
and if I may, in this case, the Stark County Park Board, or Stark County itself, through the Park Board, owns the property, is the property owner. Sorry. I'm just dealing in the facts.
I know we own the property, but we've more or less deeded it to.
You're leasing it to the
Yeah.
Fair
Leasing
Association,
it to
yes.
the Association, yeah.
In the structure of the Fair Association's governance body or in their bylaws, there should be something in there about issues like this. You should have some concern ahead of time of what their objective is. And that needs to be something.
The applicant in this case, it just gets really foggy, but again, the applicant in this case is actually the Stark County Park Board,
Right. And I
not
think
the Fair Association, even though the Fair Association's driving the proposed uses,
But I think we need to be darn
but
clear
we gotta
about
be careful here.
what the responsibilities are here. Now, I think 17 is, yeah, it's clear. We use that too, and I'm telling you, right now, we're dealing with some subdivisions in the county that, thankfully, we've run into responsible companies that are taking care of it.
And I was just going to say, I think we got to recognize that there is an enforcement
But now you're dealing
gap
with
that
Stark County.
exists, but I expect we're dealing with an owner here who will cooperate better than most, I think.
May or may not.
So the communication is probably the more important thing, you know,
Yeah.
to make sure every June that.
But let's just make sure that everybody understands. Another thing I would like is I'd like to see more of a tree belt buffer to the south between the Kitsons
Yeah, I agree.
and this property, and I'm not talking one row of trees, I'm talking several rows of trees.
Mhm. I agree.
I think if we end up with a motion today that should be reflected in the motion. I do believe that what we have is proof that this is going to reflect on Stark County and we're looking for this place to succeed. And if it does fail, we want to look at it.
I agree. Yeah, that's been kind of our, in the back of our minds as consultants is, you know, this is a big extension of the city here. We're sticking it way, you know, putting it way out beyond the normal thing. So we want to make sure it looks good. It's kind of going to be the entryway or gateway facility on the south end of town.
Kind of like putting up a wind farm or
I've heard of that.
or on the library, where that could go. Now, you mentioned at the very beginning, some association of the state, the alumni association.
The DSU Foundation had started, no. They had started some of the preliminary groundwork and planning for this, but that was a couple of years ago, I think.
It was.
It's been a slow process to get to this stage, and parties have come and gone, and now here we are, actually doing something.
Good to see you. Mr. Hazard, does that satisfy?
I believe it does, sir, yes. I'd like to go through the list that
Yeah.
the resident brought up. Value, I have
Thank
a
you.
tough time addressing that as well, but with the improvement in use, I don't believe that the value would go down for the adjacent property. Perceived value and value are two different things. The traffic, we would be doing a traffic study on the second phase of this proposal, so I believe the applicant's aware that we would look at a traffic study if they start building buildings out there to house larger events, then we would start looking at that at that point in time. That's what we kind of agreed from the staff level to present forward. The noise, you know, with beefing up the landscape / fencing in that area, that does help cut that significantly. And my background is I'm a landscape architect, so I can tell you that, you know, Steve, I know already is getting that hint on these diagrams that I get back to them that say this is what we're going to be adding. I think you would be surprised on the additional vegetative material that I've already said that they're going to be found. So I think we have that covered. The one question I do have for the board on that is, do you feel that it's necessary to have a fence and a vegetative cover?
I believe so. I think they should be both.
Can't be extra with people, and without a deterrent, there are some people, or animals, or whatever. I think the unexpected is going to happen. That makes it good thing.
The entire site, or?
I'm not so certain. You're dealing with animals. You're dealing with livestock. Now, granted, they're supposed to go into the arena or into a fenced area. I'm not for sure that I would want it fenced. And if I were the Kitsons, I would want it fenced as well. You know, at least down my way.
That tract is not fenced now?
Yes, yeah, there is.
You have a fence around the place, right?
There is a barbed wire line that runs along the back of the tree rows and where that open space is.
So the north side of their property is,
Yeah.
and I believe the east side, away from the highway. And there's some on the west, but also,
Yep.
all barbed wire fence.
Seen the fence.
So
But
maybe
the fence is quite old and it needs to be
ensuring
updated.
that the site is fenced, whether it's existing or do we want to do that? So-
Got the electric fence to prevent this measures and at that
Any ideas on what you'd like to see?
But something that, fair enough, gives people time to take care of it. We're not going to be taking buffalo and things like that.
You're going to have a buffer down there with tree rows, and if you have a good barbed wire fence, will handle any livestock. We're going to try to stop before they get into the trees. We need something there.
I think Mr. Elton probably addressed
I know the fence that's in existence out there is quite old. I mean, the cedar posts were probably brought in from the Badlands back in the 1920s. I mean, a lot of it, it's old, it's falling down. I think that they need to re-fence that whole thing. And I'm not so sure just a decent four-wire fence. I'd like an 8-foot chain link fence, and I thought maybe that's the city's responsibility as long as it's within the ETZ. He's not answering that one.
The current work on the site and drainage kind of fall together, and
Okay.
I believe that they've had conversations with our engineering department. Mark, I believe they have visited with Mark, and I think Mark and the engineering crew are on top of what's going on out there right now, and then they've been in conversations with them for the future use of it. So I think that's being addressed. Landscape screening, I mentioned. I think we'll have a nice presentation not only for the public but also for the neighbors there. PUD uses would be limited to public assembly, public sporting events. As we were talking more, clarifying what was going to be happening out there, the time frames that you brought up. We can put a condition on there for this PUD that, do you want to do 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.? That's it.
I think probably could put a time frame on, ending time frame. But an ending time frame.
That's just,
probably-
yeah, I put those numbers in there just for start the discussion.
I know some of these events go in town, they go quite late. Like turn out, they're all the time. I don't know what they're doing. But they've got the lights on, but I'm sure it's past 10 o'clock. Football game will play, rodeo will play, stuff like that. Midnight, but that's not happening every night. Not like, there's a bar, closed bar, 2 o'clock. Our balloons on vendors have to put something in together. There's some contract that they bid on them. What time are they going to be?
It would be an event time, so I would say that everything would be wrapped up.
Everybody else, ending the event,
I
or starting?
I live 2 blocks from the current site, and I've never had any issues. I mean, you have the announcer sometimes till 11 o'clock. Once or twice a year, you might have an outdoor concert there that goes till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. It's never been, I mean, I'm literally 2 blocks from there. We have fireworks there. It's once or twice a year. We're not talking every night. If it was every night, I probably would have an issue with it, but everybody understands Rough Rider Days. There's events that go on. State law is going to dictate how late they can serve alcohol, so we don't have any worries there.
I've always felt that these time limitations are really iffy things.
I mean,
So hard to enforce.
So if we say 10 o'clock and there's a rodeo that's not done, are we going to tell them we got to stop and start back the next day? I mean,
No, how you deal with it, I mean, reasonably.
I mean,
How you deal with it is that we would, if we receive complaints, that, say we said 10 and it was there at midnight and someone complained, we would then send the applicant a letter saying that they appeared to be in violation, if it continued, then we would escalate it further. But, you know, that's really how we deal with it.
I don't like timetable. I mean, I think this is, we have two responsible organizations here, the Park Board and the Fair Association, and the Rough Rider Commission. Really, the three entities are working on this. I don't see the reason for the time frame.
We talk about traffic. State Avenue handles it. I mean, it slows it down, obviously, for 20 minutes, but I'm pretty sure Highway 22 is going to be able to handle 3,500 cars. I mean, if State Avenue can handle it, I'm pretty sure Highway 22 can handle it. Especially 5 miles out or 4 miles out of town or whatever it is, so. Well, it's packed. There's 3,000-4,000 people there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, oh, you're talking about the Southwest Speedway. That I don't know, but I think that's got a pretty decent crowd every week too. Maybe not that day, but like I said, you're talking, I don't know, a few times a year where you have really, really big events. And, I mean, the rodeos, yeah, we hear the announcer sometimes at 11:30, but it's usually just wrapping up, you know, or whatever.
Okay. I just wrote it down because of the comments. The last one I had, you're talking about the different events, and probably it's worth a discussion of no motorsport year-round events, or are we concerned about that or not, or based on the groups that are approving and utilizing this site, you know, that brought up snowmobiles, you know. Are we okay with that type of use? We are, from a land use standpoint. Are we as far as time of year and the frequency? So, you know, that ties into how the site is being used. I think it's envisioned to be used weekly, small scale, you know, but weekly is the vision. And I would hope that we all think that the group that's running that is trying to promote and get more events and do more things out there on the site. So I think we need to plan for that as well. We need to also assume that they're going to be successful in getting more events at an arena that might be easier to do that. So I think that's the one comment we probably should address.
What distracts motorsports? The Demolition Derby, is that a motorsport?
It actually is. Yeah.
Is
That's why.
tractor pull that we've had in the past right in town, is that a motorsport?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so we're going to take that away from them.
No, I'm not suggesting we take it away from them. I'm just saying let's address how and why and how that use is going to happen on site and if there's going to be any restrictions on it. I mean, the example is this, and it's not to squelch the largest event they have. I mean, that's obviously the Demolition Derby, but since it is the largest event they have, if I ran that event, I would maybe try to set up a spring, summer, and fall. And, you know, if we're okay with that, then we're okay with that. But I think we should just put it on the table and let them know now if that's something that we envision and are giving them approval for now versus dealing with it after the fact, when there's one in the fall. And everybody goes, oh, well, I thought there was only one. I'm just saying, there again, I'm looking down the road, assuming that, you know, it is a large event, there's quite a following for that, you know, throughout the entire state. People will travel, you know, across the state to go to one, if there's another one on a weekend when they can attend. So, just bringing up a question of whether or not that's something else we want to, or if we just condone the one large event we have, and phase two, they come in and they say, well, we've got a whole list of other things that we'd like to do. Maybe that's how we deal with it, because we really can't answer for them, and I don't believe their representative can really answer those questions either. But I just think they're questions that are going to come up, whether it's now or phase two, and we might want to at least have it in the back of our minds for the discussion now.
That's one thing, one issue I have with PUDs and development agreements. Sometimes we write in so much stuff. Who watches over it forever? I mean, sometimes those development agreements get signed and they get shoved in a drawer. I mean, unless somebody complains, do we ever go back and look at it?
Well,
No, probably.
starting this fall, so yes, we are.
That's a real legitimate concern.
Yeah, it is.
Really is.
It is, and I had that concern the first day I started on the job.
I mean, I've seen development agreements that are 50 pages long that have so many conditions in them. And once that developer's gone, what good is that? I mean, let's say, I mean, they walk away from it. I mean, what good is the agreement? I mean, who enforces it? I mean,
Well, right, I can tell you right now, and I can't really speak for the past. Right now, what we're doing is we have a spreadsheet, and we being city attorney and myself and city engineering, we have all of the development agreements that have been approved. We are going back on all of those and reviewing them and making sure that they're in compliance. Can't say that was ever done before because I don't think it was. But it will be done from now forward. And same thing with the planning and development. You know, I mean, the conditions of approval. We're going to review all of the applications that you folks approve on an annual basis in the fall. Make sure that they're in compliance with what they were supposed to be doing. If not, put them on notice. And if by late winter, early spring, they haven't complied, they'll be back here in front of you explaining why they haven't, and then you would have the ability to revoke those applications.
You know, I know these guys are doing that, but that's really a legitimate concern with all these PUDs.
I totally agree.
It's one thing to have an ordinance that says things, but an entirely different thing when you have customized PUDs. But getting back to the noise thing, I wouldn't have a problem with 3 or 4 demolition derbies a year. I don't have a problem with anything like that. Where I'd have a problem is if it were opened up to motocross 5 nights a week for 4 months or something like that. That I would have a problem with that. I don't know how we...
Anything else would have to be a request.
Yes, we could absolutely put that condition in, whether you want to say that certain events are not allowed or need permission, or set a limit of how many of those events or how frequent they can be done. Things like that can absolutely be written in.
These are the provisions. But I could do with that. All day long. I love it. But the noise from the ambient, the dust, a lot of them are not running gas motors, they're oil gas mixed.
so where would that request come into? And who would make the final say?
For
They
the
come back-
event?
Yeah, let's say they want to have motocross 3 days a week. Who do they request it to? You? And then you decide, or does it have to come in
I'm not
front of us
sure.
again?
Honestly, I don't, I think it probably would come to me. If we're not approving it as a recreational site, which we're really not, it's a public event site, then the answer would be no.
So we could, another question, for instance, this would not be arbitrary, it would have to be approved. But the noise from the ambient, the dust, and the lot of them are not running. But the noise from the ambient, the
Correct, it would have to be approved.
by someone, and then approval, recognition, has to be given now, or we'll have to get application form, have to be set in place now. And the community look forward, provide for avenue for them to ask for
Correct.
What if Walter hates motocross, but his replacement 3 years down the road loves motocross? And he says, this is a great idea, let's have motocross out there 5 nights a week.
So that's why I said it could not be arbitrary.
It would have-
If it is individuals, there would be a process that anyone can follow.
But who would rule on it?
You would probably have to come before, you probably have to get changed in the PUD, have to come a request, or go to the city, right?
Well, there's going to be a baseline that, of uses that we're assuming are allowed uses as part of this plan unit development approved. And that would be public assembly, public recreation, sporting affiliated, public events. So we're approving all of those public events. What I think we're getting mixed up with is if 5 buddies who have access to the fairgrounds want to go out and motocross, that's not allowed.
That's what I'm saying, but if the fairgrounds decides that a motocross tour is coming through Dickinson and they want to have a public event up there, right now it would be okay.
Yes, if it's a public event,
Motocross would be a public event. I mean, it would be a motocross event.
but as we all know, that evolves into practice, fun, teaching the kids how to ride. That really isn't what this facility is
No.
proposed for. So I mean, that's where the line is the public events that we pay to go to versus.
Let's say it's Southwest Speedway and they want to have a motocross there every Saturday and it's a public event. That would be fine. That's the point I'm trying to get. How do you write, I mean, here we go again, we can write 100 things in here again, but somebody's got to watch it and make sure that it's being enforced. And maybe Kitsons don't live there forever, and they love, the next people love them motocross, or, I don't know. They don't come in and complain.
Right.
And a couple of things. One is this, the size of the arena right now, I think is proposed for, it's a standard rodeo arena, 240 by 180 or something, so it doesn't lend itself to motocross events, just to keep in mind of the scale of the proposed phase 1. Phase 2 is kind of it's out there somewhere with some concepts, that's all it is. I know at one point they had talked about doing those types of things indoors, a large enough facility that you could, I think the Billings, the Metro over at Billings, I've not been in it, but I think it's big enough to hold those types of things, at least on small scale. So just as far as scale of facility, that's what they're talking about right now. The second thing I thought was, we're trying to decide how to enforce additional uses, annoying uses, that sort of thing, and I thought, and rather than having the planning director be the arbiter of what's good and acceptable, why not, could we craft a condition or something, some requirement in the PUD document that requires proposals to show up in front of the P&Z, the whole P&Z commission, that, let's say somebody wants to have a motocross event that 5 nights a week, is there a way to craft a condition or a requirement for them, for the applicant of that event to show up here? And you guys can decide based on conditions at the time the application is made, whether it's appropriate. It may be by the time that proposal shows up that the place is surrounded with single-family homes, and no, not cool at all. Or it may be next week, and for the next 25 years, it could be okay because there's unfortunately only one neighbor. Not to minimize your condition, it's just that, there are different conditions at the time an application could arrive. So just an idea I thought I had, maybe there's a way to craft something that, some language that would allow more than just the planning director to have their personal whims involved.
Well, I agree, I think there is, but the only problem with it is a typical planning ahead for those events The only reason it would be good to have it, some sort of an administrative approval, and it wouldn't matter if it went to myself or it could go to the mayor for their approval, is the timing. Typically,
Right.
you know, someone wants to do an event, they'll want to know, we'll say, well, gee, we can't get you on this next agenda because we're meeting next week.
Right.
That is the biggest stumbling block on getting in front of this board. So no, I would just as soon rather have it come to the board, but realistically, day to day, it doesn't necessarily work that well, because it doesn't work that well with our applications, our normal applications. So that's my only comment on that. But I'm sure Jennifer can come up with.
I think that's a valid concern. That was mine in thinking about it, is planning and zoning, because the deadline is 30 days before they meet. Realistically, some events are not planned that far in advance. So if we were going to craft some sort of condition, I think it would be more appropriate to go to either city commission for approval, or maybe the executive team of the city, so that it's not just one person making the decision based on their personal feelings, but you have a group of people that are looking at it as a whole and how it affects the city, neighbors, all of those things, rather than just one person.
I think we could, if this would be worked on, but as a condition, this, future events, different techniques, will be worked on the process. Those techniques, those commitments, to address that. I think that's something that should be worked on. Maybe facilitate their usage of the property.
I like Jen's idea with the executive team, because it's the city administrator, all the department heads involved, and that would be, and we meet weekly. So the event would be not held up any more than a week.
And that's currently how special events are approved, Alive at 5, any of like the downtown walks, things like that, those are handled by the executive team, and as Walter said, it's on a weekly basis, so that's something that if it's sort of a last minute planning, not 1 or 2 months out, it could still be handled.
I don't think we should have it in our heads that we're going to cover every little possibility here. It's not possible. We got to leave enough flexibility, as imperfect as that is, that we got to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hadley.
Those are the only items I had to clarify for the neighbor's response. Staff, in reviewing it, with the 20 conditions, proposed conditions, feel that issues have been addressed there. We will address the future issues on phase 2 and 3. And with that, I would say that staff recommends approval of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any other comments from the commission? If being on the close the public portion of the hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the request to rezone from agriculture to PUD as depicted in Attachment A as being consistent with the City of Dickinson's comprehensive plan and as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code, and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare. However, I do want to see between 5 and 6 rows of trees on that south boundary.
Fencing?
That's a part of my motion.
And the fencing?
And fencing.
And you're talking a barbed wire boundary fence?
I want a barbed wire boundary fence, yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second to the motion. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And is there any other items that you'd like to bring before the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Mr. Hadley.
Oh, sorry, I'll shut up here eventually. You do have a new deadline calendar in your packet. We have changed, if you've noticed in the past, the deadlines were actually on Saturday. No one's here on Saturday, so we've been moving them to Monday. Now we're moving them to Friday, which is traditional. As I said a few months ago, we are going to this winter, and we've already expedited. This application is one of them. Applications are going to come in if they're complete and ready to go. They're going to be on the agenda the next month instead of 2 months down the road. The development community really likes that. I haven't heard one of them that doesn't like that idea. It does require them to get a little more homework done before they come in the door. They need to get fire approval, what have you. They need to go around, make the rounds with their plans. For this particular application, they would have had to go around and get all the application comments and not have us do it. Because right now, we're soliciting all the comments for people coming in. Really isn't a good scenario, because some of the agencies respond, some of them don't, and we just assume that if they don't have a comment. That isn't really a good assumption on our part. So, it isn't necessarily to burden down those other agencies, but just a simple one-line email is all we're going to need a copy of from the applicant to come in the door and apply for an application similar to this. So they will have it on that deadline date, and we'll move forward. So anyway, this is the first step in us legitimizing the new process that we're going to institute. Other thing, this winter, as I said, we're going to start looking at amending portions of our ordinance, or re-looking at it. If we have concerns, if we have areas, there's a few, I've got a list started on my desk. If you do have anything that you'd like us to address, please feel free to give it to me, get it to Jennifer, so we can do it. We'd like to do a number of amendments this winter, kind of clean house a little bit. We've had stuff like, we did have a couple of sign ordinances floating around. I think we've verified that we have the right one, and everyone's following that now. A little confusion. I mean, there was a number of things obviously going on here when it was very, very busy. I think there was some confusion. Things were changed, and not necessarily did the public know at all times that those things were being done. So anyway, we're going to be a little more forthright as far as bringing that up, making people discuss it. I am pretty involved with the Downtown Association. We're going to really promote the Renaissance Zone. I'm going to turn Steve loose on that. I'm there as a cheerleader, drumming up the business for him, and we're going to try to process a number of Renaissance Zone applications this next year. We're going to also try to do some demonstration lighting. We've got some lighting standards that we've adopted as a city now. Very similar. They're exactly the same ones that are going to be on the overpass, the railroad overpass that's being built. So as that goes up, you'll see that. That's our new lighting standard that you'll see popping up. Thrifty White's putting them in. There'll be a number of locations that they'll start popping up, and I think you'll like it because it's going to provide a little more continuity. It sounds silly, but if you use those lighting standards that have a little bit of an architectural feature to them, it does tend to tie your whole community together as you start putting them around your community. So that's one thing we're starting to work on right now. I have a pile of books up here by Gene. They're planning and landscape architecture books. They're just good examples of throughout the country of different ways of doing the same thing, and articles on planning and design and that type of thing. It's a good reuse of these. If you'd like to take 1, 2, 3, please take them. I mean, they're good reference. I think you can throw them on your office table and someone can read it when they're there. But it's good to kind of get that word out, and we are going to try to be a little more publicly oriented as far as with the business community, what have you, and just try to make sure that what we have in place is actually a consensus of the community. Because sometimes that's a big stumbling block. If you have standards in place that the community doesn't support, then every item is a battle. And we really don't need that. I mean, what we're here to really do is make sure that developments are done to meet the city standard that we have adopted. So with that, I'll be quiet, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.